I'm back in Power BI Desktop, but not in a course project. I'm in a separate project, which you can find attached to this lecture. Now here I am in the data view, and in the data view we have three different tables. At the moment I'm in the product type table, and there you see that we have an ID column and the corresponding color column. So a unique ID specifying the color of what? Well, if you look at the other tables of the cars produced and the cars sold. So if we check out these other tables, you can see that in the cars produced table, we have again the ID and the units produced and the year when these units, so when these cars were produced. But the ID occurs multiple times here, so we don't have a single ID in contrast to our product type table. And for the cars sold table, we have the same structure. So again, ID, units sold and year, and also with multiple occurrences of the IDs. So let's keep that in mind and let's go to the report view now. Because here, if I unselect this, I have prepared two visuals already. The left one shows us the units produced and the units sold. So the green bar are the units produced, the units sold are the darker bar. And in the right table, we have basically the same information, just vice versa. So we have units sold and units produced. In the left table, the units produced seem to display correct values. In the right table, the units sold seem to have the correct values. For the units sold here and the units produced there, well, something is wrong at the moment. If I select the first table, for example, you can also see why this is the case. Because in this table, the ID of the car and the units produced, so our first value here, is retrieved from the cars produced table. But the units sold, well, we want to get these from the second table, the cars sold table. So apparently there is a missing relationship between these two tables. Same thing is the case for the second table. If I select this one, here I use the cars sold tables information for the ID of the car and the units sold, and the units produced are retrieved from the cars produced table. Now we can of course discuss whether this makes a lot of sense to have kind of the same information in these two tables, just the other way around. But the core idea behind the many-to-many relationship, and that's what this lecture is all about, can be demonstrated perfectly with this example. So we have the problem that information from another table is required in our current visualization. Well, this brings us to the relationship view, of course, and here we can again find our three tables. And the problem at the moment is that our cars produced and our cars sold tables contain the ID multiple times, whereas the product type table contains the unique IDs for the cars and the corresponding colors. And if you think back about the logic we learned already, this many-to-one or one-to-many relationship, then you can actually find the structure here in our tables. Because why don't we create a many, here we have the ID multiple times, to one relationship, here we have the unique IDs with the product type table, and then do the same thing for the car sold table. So we take the ID of the car, which occurs multiple times, and connect it to the ID of the car in the product type table where we have the unique IDs. With this, we have kind of a structure we know already, a many-to-one relationship here. So let's see if this improves our situation. In the report view, we can see that this is not the case. Although there is kind of a connection now between the tables, this connection only occurs between the cars produced and the product type table and the cars sold and the product type table. But we don't have a way to communicate between these two tables, which is required because then we can retrieve the units produced from that table with the ID of the connector, which allows us to allocate the information. Back in the relationship view, we see also the reason for this. Because here, if we take a closer look at our relationships, you can see these arrows here, this one and that one. And that was the structure we had in the course project. So the product type was our fact table, and cars produced and cars sold were kind of our dim tables. And this worked perfectly because the fact table, as I call it here now, was able to retrieve information from the dim tables, and therefore our whole construct worked perfectly. Now we have a different problem though. Now our product type table here is not kind of the fact or the center table, it's just a connector between these two tables. Because actually the ID car in the cars produced table and the ID car in the cars sold table, well, these two must communicate. For this, we need to double click our arrow here and now go down to the cross filter direction here. At the moment, this is set to single, so from one table to the other one. But if I change this from a single to both here and press OK, then we get a second arrow indicating that the tables can communicate in both ways. So information can flow from here to the cost produced table and the other way around. Well, and in the report view now, we see that this fixed our problem with the units sold in our first visual here. However, in the second visual, it's still not working because there we also have to enable the cross-filter direction. So let's double click here. Let's change it from single to both and press OK. And now in the report view, you can see that our visuals are working correctly. So we now established a many ID car to many ID car again relationship. Now this is one, workaround to achieve this many-to-many relationship here. And this was also the way to do it in earlier versions of Power BI Desktop. In the meanwhile, Power BI Desktop comes with an integrated logic, you could say, to handle such many-to-many relationships. This concept is called bidirectional cross-filtering. And as this is still the basics part of the course, I don't want to dive too deep into this at the moment. We will have a closer look at it in the advanced module towards the end of the course now. Therefore, for the moment, this is how many-to-many relationships can be created with the cross-filter direction set to both. Later in the course, we'll have a look at bidirectional cross-filtering. So this was cardinality and the cross-filter direction. There is one last core concept behind relationships left though.